The very first time that you change jobs as a business analyst, you're going to notice that the job that you're going into is significantly different than the job you were doing in your previous company. And so in this video, I'm going to talk to you about 3 of the key ways that one business analyst job can be different from another business analyst job. And the reason why this is important is because it helps you to predict what your future role is going to look like based on the key factors that differentiate between one business analyst role and another. It'll help you to better prepare yourself for your next job and to hit the ground running when you do start. Before we dive into the 3 factors, let's just talk about the one factor that a lot of people think affects business analyst roles, but is not really that big of a factor at all. If you go onto the website of the IIBA and you head down to the history page, you're going to see a picture of exactly what I have here in the backdrop of this video. And the reason why the IIBA has that is because a lot of people don't know that the IIBA was actually founded right here in Toronto, Canada, and it is currently headquartered in the Greater Toronto area. And you know the IIBA to be a global organization. And what that should tell you that is that even though the IIBA was founded here in Toronto, they are standardizing the business analyst role across the entire globe. So it really doesn't matter if you're doing business analysis here in Toronto, whether you're doing it in New York, whether you're doing it in Sydney, whether you're doing it in Hyderabad in India. It doesn't really matter where you are on the globe. And if you've been wondering whether your location or the geography is a factor, you can write that off right there, because it doesn't really matter which country you're in, which city you're in. Business analysis does not really vary a whole lot between different countries and different cities. By far, the biggest factor that's going to affect what your next business analyst role looks like is whether they are expecting you to be more of a systems analyst or whether they want you to be much more on the business side of things. With business analysis, there is this wide spectrum of how technical you can be, right? On the far end of the spectrum, they may expect you to know how to do some coding, maybe some SQL, and to really understand the systems inside out. On the other end of the spectrum, you're an analyst who works mostly on the business side of things. You're helping to do a lot of process design. You're helping to do a lot of the change management that goes along with deploying new enterprise scale applications. The next job you're going to be going into is going to expect you to fall somewhere on that scale. If right now you are much more on the business side, they expect you to be much more technical analyst. That gives you some hints as to some of the things that you're going to have to do to be able to prepare for the next job that you are going into. All right. The second biggest factor that's going to affect what your role looks like is whether you are working in the application support world or whether you are doing project work. The skill set needed to do maintenance work on existing solutions is significantly different than the skill sets that you need as an analyst to be able to run a project and to deploy a net new solution. The likelihood is that in your first job, you're probably much more on the maintenance and the support side of things. And there's a chance that in your new role, there may be some expectation that they want you to do project work. And those 2 skill sets are significantly different from each other, because what it takes to actually run and deploy a project requires a much wider set of skills than doing the maintenance work, right? Typically, when you're doing a lot of maintenance or application support work, you are expected to learn the system and the solution inside out and then work with the business to figure out how you can resolve some of the defects that exist. And you might be doing some small enhancements to the existing application, but there isn't a whole lot of new features and functions in the application support world that has to get built into the solution. On the other end of the scale, project work will normally require you to do all of the groundwork that's needed to be able to understand the business problems and to be able to do some of the design work that needs to be done for the rest of the team to be able to deploy a net new solution. And in the project world, even there's a lot of variations. You can have small projects, medium-sized and large-sized projects, but the difference between your existing role and your new role may have a lot to do with whether you're currently doing support work or application maintenance work, or whether you are expected to deploy a net new solution through going through a project. The third major factor has to do with the types of solutions you work with, right? Generally speaking, out in the enterprise space, there are custom-built solutions and then there are off-the-shelf solutions. With custom-built solutions, typically you have a large project team of software developers who build a solution from the ground up. In the off-the-shelf or the COTS space, your company normally purchases a pre-built software product and they configure it to satisfy the business needs. As an analyst working on COTS solutions, it's significantly different than working on custom-built solutions, because In the custom world, you have a lot more flexibility to design and to build features and functions that don't necessarily exist in the off-the-shelf world. But in the off-the-shelf world, the products tend to be a lot more mature, which means that if there is an enhancement request that you need to deploy on an off-the-shelf solution, you can typically do a lot more quickly than you would be able to do it in the custom world. All right. Those are the top 3 factors that are going to affect what your new role looks like as an analyst when you're switching jobs. But there are a lot of other factors that we talk about inside of our community. So I have a full 1-hour video where I talk about a lot of other factors that affect how one business analyst role looks from another one. I'll encourage you to join our community and watch that video. Take one more. Let's add a 4th factor. I'll take one more off of that list and talk about it here because it is, again, one of the more important ones. It's hard for me to summarize it just into the top 3. The size of your organization is the 4th factor that will significantly affect what your role looks like. So if you started off in a small company, chances are the expectation is that you're expected to work on a wide variety of different types of solutions. And you're really kind of like a jack of all trades type of analyst that has to work on an HR system or work on a finance system and then move over there and work on some different type of solution, work with this business area or work with a different business area, right? Smaller organizations tend to not have the resources needed to be able to let you specialize in HR. And quite frankly, many smaller organizations don't have that kind of a need. And so they're not willing to really hire a huge analysis team who can all specialize. If you work for a global multinational corporation on the other end of the spectrum, chances are that you are responsible not only for one domain such as HR, but really one area of one domain. So if you're in the HR space, chances are you are specializing in either recruitment or compensation or core HR or some other area of HR. And that's where you spend the majority of your time working is in one very small niche area of the domain and the system that you're working on. Because in larger organizations, the complexity exists in a lot of other places and they need a lot of people to be able to support the enterprise class applications that a lot of global multinational organizations need. There's a lot more complexity in this space, and larger organizations tend to have much bigger budgets to be able to support a much bigger organization. And that's why they can afford to hire a larger team of analysts who are all now specialists in certain areas. So I said there's 3 factors, but I've thrown in that 4th factor. But the important message I want to get across to you here is that you may have started your job as a business analyst in one type of an organization, working on one type of a solution, and you might have the expectation that your next job is going to look very similar to it. There's a high likelihood that your next job is going to look very significantly different. Those 4 factors will help you to kind of predict how your next job may differ from the job that you're doing right now. And again, if you want to learn about the other factors, make sure you watch our full 1-hour video because there are other factors that can affect it. And understanding really kind of the richness of the variety of the types of analyst roles that exist out there is really going to better equip you for planning your long-term career. So I'll leave this video here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment sections and I'll see you on the next one.
BA Blocks, the building blocks for your BA career.